The Department of Homeland Security's refusal to release the records of Prince Harry.
The narrative being pushed in this segment takes a sharp, high-intensity turn right from the start, framing Tom Bower as a central voice whose past investigations are now being reinterpreted with even more drama and urgency than before. In this version of the discussion, Bower is described as someone who has spent years following leads that others allegedly avoided, and his book Betrayal, Power, Deceit, and the Fight for the Future of the Royal Family is presented as a turning point in how the Sussex story is viewed by certain commentators. It is important to emphasize right away that what follows reflects claims, interpretations, and commentary circulating in media and online spaces, rather than confirmed legal findings or verified official investigations. The tone being used in this narrative suggests a growing pressure building around Meghan Markle, described by supporters of this viewpoint as coming from multiple fronts at once, including financial scrutiny, immigration-related speculation, and broader media attention that has shifted in tone over time. Some commentators even frame this as a convergence of different systems of public accountability, but again, these are interpretations and allegations being discussed, not established conclusions. The story then shifts heavily into financial discussion, which is presented as the foundation of all other claims in this narrative style. According to this framing, the post-royal business ventures associated with the Sussexes are described as struggling to meet early expectations, with major media partnerships often referenced as examples of ambitious deals that reportedly did not fully deliver the long-term outcomes initially predicted. The Netflix partnership is often described in commentary as a high-profile deal that generated significant public attention at the beginning, with expectations of documentaries, series, and long-term content development. However, in this narrative framing, critics argue that the output did not match the scale of the initial announcement, and they interpret that gap as evidence of limited creative or commercial traction. Similarly, the Spotify deal is frequently mentioned as another major partnership that generated debate online, with some commentators describing it as an example of a mismatch between valuation and long-term content performance. In these discussions, the cancellation or ending of podcast-related content is often highlighted as a turning point in public perception of the Sussex media strategy. Another recurring element in this narrative is Meghan Markle's lifestyle brand efforts, often described in visually strong but commercially inconsistent terms by critics in online commentary spaces. The launch campaigns, curated branding, and aesthetic presentation are often acknowledged as highly polished, but the commercial results are debated heavily, with supporters and critics offering very different interpretations of success. At this stage in the narrative, financial sustainability becomes the central theme, with some commentators introducing estimated lifestyle costs tied to private security, housing, travel, staffing, and public appearances. These figures are frequently repeated in online discussions, but it must be clearly understood that such numbers are estimates circulated by commentators rather than independently verified financial disclosures. The argument being made in this framing is that when expenses are perceived as high and income sources appear reduced or unstable, scrutiny naturally increases from both media and public observers. However, it is also important to note that this remains speculative framing, not an official financial audit or confirmed accounting analysis. From here, the narrative escalates into more controversial territory, shifting toward immigration-related discussion involving Prince Harry. This section is frequently presented online as a legal and procedural debate about US visa rules, particularly around past disclosures made in his memoir Spare, where he openly discussed prior drug use. Commentators referencing this issue often point to general US immigration principles that consider substance-related admissions as relevant in visa evaluations. However, it is crucial to state clearly that there is no publicly confirmed evidence presented here of any current official immigration enforcement action or legal proceeding regarding his residency status. The discussion instead centers on perceived consistency in how immigration rules are applied across different individuals, with critics arguing that high-profile cases attract disproportionate attention. Supporters of this viewpoint raise questions about fairness and transparency, while others argue that speculation without formal documentation risks distorting public understanding. The narrative then introduces advocacy groups and organizations that have requested transparency through formal information requests, often cited in online discussions as part of broader accountability efforts. These efforts are described by supporters as attempts to clarify public interest questions. But again, outcomes and implications remain subjects of debate rather than confirmed conclusions. As the story continues, it shifts into even more sensitive territory, involving speculation about children and timelines. This section is widely acknowledged as controversial, and it must be handled with caution since it involves personal family matters and unverified online claims. Some commentators in fringe and non-mainstream spaces have raised questions about inconsistencies in public timelines, documentation, and visibility surrounding royal-related events. However, these claims remain unproven and are heavily disputed, with critics warning that online speculation can easily distort or misinterpret private circumstances. Because of the sensitivity of the topic, responsible interpretation requires separating verified facts from online conjecture, especially when it involves minors or family privacy. The narrative then moves into biographical speculation about Meghan Markle's personal history, including claims about inconsistencies in reported timelines. Some online discussions reference statements from family members or acquaintances as part of these debates, but these accounts are often contested, interpreted differently, or taken out of context depending on the source. One of the most controversial points raised in these discussions involves alleged age discrepancies, with some commentators suggesting differences between official records and claimed timelines. It is important to clearly state that these are allegations and theories circulating in online spaces, not established or verified facts. Supporters of this line of speculation argue that timeline inconsistencies, if they existed, would affect how various life events are interpreted. Critics strongly reject these interpretations, emphasizing the lack of credible documentation and warning against building narratives on unverified claims. The discussion then expands into broader narrative building, where multiple unrelated claims are combined into a single overarching interpretation. In this framing, financial pressure, legal questions, immigration debates, and biographical speculation are all woven together into one continuous storyline. Supporters of this interpretation believe these overlapping discussions point toward a larger pattern worth examining. However, critics argue that combining unrelated claims can create a misleading impression of connection when none has been proven. As the narrative progresses, the tone becomes increasingly open-ended, with no clear resolution offered, instead leaving the audience with ongoing questions and interpretations. Additional commentary in this space often emphasizes uncertainty, suggesting that evolving public scrutiny, shifting media narratives, and ongoing debate will continue to shape how these stories are perceived. At the same time, responsible framing requires recognizing that much of what is being discussed remains unverified, contested, or based on interpretation rather than confirmed fact. Even so, the narrative continues to evolve in online spaces where speculation, commentary, and analysis frequently blend together into a single, highly charged discussion environment. The final idea left hanging in this section is the suggestion that public narratives around high-profile figures remain fluid, influenced by media cycles, public opinion, and ongoing reinterpretation of past events. And even as new claims and counterclaims continue to circulate, much of the discussion remains unresolved, with no definitive conclusions emerging from the competing perspectives being presented. These aren't just casual rumors floating around anymore. They're pointed questions that people are demanding answers to, not empty accusations, but real heavy questions that keep gaining traction. And now, In April 2026, these discussions are spreading fast across media platforms at a speed that would have been completely unimaginable just a couple of years back, almost like a wildfire of speculation and scrutiny. The Mediterranean years, the engineered meeting theories, and the deeper background threads are all colliding here. And this is exactly the section of the story that Tom Bower has been quietly building toward for years, even while mainstream outlets kept their distance and hesitation locked tight. Before Meghan Markle became known as a supporting actress on the TV show Suits, there was this earlier chapter of her life, often described as her Mediterranean phase or pre-Hollywood journey, and now that period is getting intense attention from independent researchers, journalists, and online investigators who claim they are digging into resurfacing photos, timelines, and archived records. These materials, according to those following the story closely, are coming from sources who are no longer willing to stay silent, adding even more fuel to an already heated narrative landscape filled with speculation and debate. That ambition, according to this narrative thread, shaped many of her later decisions, relationships, and career moves, all of which are now being re-examined under a much more critical lens by those following the story closely. Researchers and commentators argue that in Hollywood, ambitious individuals seeking access to powerful networks have always looked for unconventional entry points into elite circles. And that conversation keeps resurfacing in this case with increasing intensity and curiosity. One of the most talked about claims revolves around the so-called yacht circuit, which refers to private gatherings on luxury yachts in the Mediterranean and other exclusive locations, often linked in public imagination to wealthy and influential social circles. Some discussions suggest Meghan may have been present in such environments before her relationship with Prince Harry, a claim that has circulated for years in fringe spaces, but is now being openly questioned in more mainstream commentary circles as well. What's changed now is the framing of the question itself, which is no longer "did it happen?" but rather "how extensive was it?" with speculation even stretching into whether the number of alleged appearances was in double digits or even triple digits, a shift that signals how the conversation has evolved dramatically over time. That change alone has intensified debate because it moves the discussion from uncertainty into assumed scale, which is a very different kind of public narrative shift altogether. A year ago, these ideas were mostly confined to online communities that mainstream commentators often dismissed outright. But today, some well-known media voices are openly referencing them, treating them as discussion points rather than outright dismissals. Even 6 months ago, the framing was cautious and speculative, but now it is increasingly direct, focusing less on if and more on how much, which has completely changed the tone of the conversation landscape. Photographs are also frequently mentioned in these discussions, with researchers claiming that certain images place Meghan in specific environments alongside individuals whose identities and connections are being heavily debated online. These alleged visual records are said to raise questions about timing, context, and association, although none of these interpretations are universally accepted and remain part of a highly contested public discourse. Tom Bower has also pointed out claims that aspects of Meghan's early history appear to have been removed or become difficult to trace online, with some describing it as a scrubbing of digital footprints long before she became a globally recognized public figure. This idea feeds directly into broader narratives about image management and narrative control in the digital age, where past records can be difficult to verify or reconstruct with certainty. This leads directly into the Soho House meeting narrative, which is often presented in official accounts as a chance encounter story, two people meeting through mutual connections, leading to a romantic connection that eventually became widely known. It's framed almost like a modern fairy tale, simple and unplanned, with a clean origin story that is easy for the public to digest and repeat. However, critics and researchers, including Tom Bower, have questioned whether this meeting was truly random or whether it was influenced or facilitated by individuals within elite social circles who had both access and interest in bringing certain people together. Within this discussion, the name Marcus Anderson frequently appears, described as a well-connected figure within the Soho House network who remains unusually present in the couple's wider social orbit. From a broader investigative perspective, Tom Bower's work is often framed as methodical and detail-driven, focusing on contradictions, timelines, and cross-referenced accounts rather than accepting polished public narratives at face value. His approach is described as persistent and structured, built on following patterns and questioning inconsistencies, even when subjects are highly sensitive or legally complex. Within the Sussex discussion, however, even his supporters reportedly disagree with one particular interpretation, that Catherine, Princess of Wales, felt threatened by Meghan Markle because many argue the dynamic is better understood through institutional pressure and emotional response rather than direct personal threat. That disagreement itself has become part of the wider debate surrounding interpretation versus perception in royal narratives. Supporters of Catherine instead describe her experience as one shaped by long-term institutional commitment, where years of structured responsibility, public duties, and controlled expectations define her role within the monarchy in a very disciplined way. This includes constant public engagements, charity visits, and formal appearances that build the foundation of her public identity over time. The contrast being drawn in this narrative is between long-term institutional integration versus rapid entry into a highly structured environment, which critics argue naturally creates tension, misunderstanding, and competing expectations within royal dynamics. That tension is often described as institutional rather than personal, but it is still heavily debated depending on perspective and interpretation. Prince William is also frequently mentioned in these accounts as someone who allegedly recognized early tension and attempted to provide caution or guidance to Harry, though interpretations of those interactions vary widely depending on source and narrative framing. Harry's decisions, meanwhile, are often portrayed as driven by personal conviction and emotional commitment, which further complicates how different observers interpret the unfolding events. Polling data is then introduced as a way to measure public sentiment, often used to illustrate how perceptions of royal figures have shifted significantly over time across different segments of the public. These numbers are frequently cited in discussions as a snapshot of reputation rather than a complete explanation of deeper structural dynamics. According to widely circulated figures, approval ratings differ sharply across royal family members, with some maintaining strong public support while others face significantly lower favorability scores, reflecting a polarized public perception landscape that continues to evolve. In practical terms, commentators often argue that public approval directly influences commercial viability, media partnerships, and brand association opportunities, especially in modern celebrity-driven ecosystems where reputation plays a critical economic role. When approval ratings drop significantly, it can affect visibility, partnerships, and long-term positioning in entertainment and media industries. What we're looking at here isn't just random chatter anymore. It's a full-blown wave of claims, interpretations, and competing narratives that are spreading faster than ever, and people are now treating them with a level of seriousness that wasn't there before. The conversation in April 2026 has shifted again, and this time it feels heavier, louder, and way more aggressive in tone, like the whole thing has reached a boiling point in public discussion spaces. Tom Bower, according to supporters of his work, allegedly saw this entire situation developing years ago, especially the idea that financial pressure would eventually become a major turning point in the Sussex story. He has been quoted in commentary circles as suggesting that once major streaming deals and large contracts weaken or expire, the couple would face serious structural challenges in sustaining their lifestyle. Whether people agree with that interpretation or not, it has definitely become part of the wider debate surrounding their public and financial trajectory. And when you look at the numbers being discussed online, one of the most repeated talking points is Harry's approval rating, dropping to around 30%, which commentators describe as a dramatic shift compared to his earlier years as one of the most liked members of the royal family. People online frame this as one of the steepest reputation declines in modern royal discussion history. Although it is important to remember, these are public opinion metrics, not fixed facts carved in stone. Still, the emotional reaction to that shift is what keeps fueling the conversation at full speed. Supporters of Bower's perspective argue that this decline is tied directly to personal decisions, media exposure, and the public narrative surrounding Harry's departure from royal duties, while critics say the situation is far more complex and influenced by media polarization, cultural division, and global attention cycles. Either way, the discussion is intense, and it continues to evolve as new commentary enters the space every single week. A major part of this narrative revolves around speculation about what happens when Prince William eventually becomes king, a topic that is frequently discussed in royal commentary circles, especially in relation to long-term decisions about royal titles and roles. Some analysts suggest that structural changes could occur under a new reign, potentially affecting how remaining family members are officially recognized within the institution. However, these ideas remain speculative projections rather than confirmed outcomes, and they are often debated heavily by royal watchers. The idea being pushed in some commentary is that once William takes the throne, he may adopt a more decisive and streamlined approach to royal structure, potentially redefining roles, titles, and responsibilities within the monarchy. In this interpretation, the Sussex chapter is often described as something that could be formally concluded in a more rigid institutional sense, though again, this is all part of ongoing speculation rather than established fact. What intensifies this discussion even further is the claim that Harry is reportedly aware of these possible future outcomes, which some commentators say influences his current decisions and public positioning. Whether that is accurate or not is debated heavily, but it adds emotional weight to the narrative being discussed across media platforms and online communities. A lot of attention is also given to past public appearances, including tours and media engagements, which critics analyze for tone, messaging, and perceived intent. One frequently discussed example is the Australian tour period, which some commentators interpret as a moment where branding, media visibility, and royal association all intersected in a highly visible way. Others, however, argue that such interpretations are exaggerated and remove context from what was simply a series of public engagements. In certain commentary spaces, it is claimed that events like speaking engagements and live appearances were structured in ways that blended personal branding with charitable messaging. Although supporters of the Sussexes strongly reject the idea that anything inappropriate or unusual was taking place, this is where the conversation becomes deeply divided, with interpretation often depending on perspective rather than verifiable fact. Some commentators go further by analyzing ticketed events, speaking fees, and public appearances, suggesting that these reflect a broader shift toward commercialized personal branding within modern celebrity culture. Others push back strongly, arguing that public figures routinely engage in paid speaking events and that this does not automatically imply anything unusual or controversial. Tom Bower's commentary, as discussed by supporters and critics alike, is often described as sharply critical, particularly when it comes to motivations and personal ambition. However, even his interpretations are not universally accepted, and many readers challenge his framing as being overly negative or selectively interpreted. Still, his work has undeniably influenced how parts of the public now discuss these topics. One of the most debated ideas circulating online is the claim that early relationships, social environments, or pre-fame experiences played a role in shaping later public narratives, but these claims remain highly contested and heavily disputed by many observers. There is no single agreed-upon version of events, and that uncertainty is exactly what keeps the discussion alive and constantly evolving. Another recurring theme in commentary is the idea of media narrative control, which refers to how public figures manage their image through interviews, public statements, and media partnerships. Some argue that this is standard practice in celebrity culture, while others believe it creates gaps between public perception and private reality that fuel ongoing speculation. The discussion then often shifts toward financial sustainability, with some commentators suggesting that large media deals and partnerships may not always provide long-term stability unless continuously renewed or expanded. Others counter this by pointing out that high-profile individuals often diversify income streams through speaking engagements, production deals, and brand collaborations. Political context is also frequently brought into the conversation, especially when discussing immigration systems, public status, and residency frameworks in different countries. Some commentators raise questions about how high-profile individuals navigate legal systems, while others emphasize that all such processes operate under formal legal structures and oversight, regardless of fame or status. A major point of disagreement online is how much public scrutiny should apply to private individuals who also occupy public-facing roles, especially when their actions intersect with global media attention. This tension between privacy and public interest is one of the core drivers of ongoing debate surrounding the Sussex narrative. At the same time, critics of the entire discussion argue that online spaces often amplify speculation far beyond what evidence supports, creating layered narratives that mix fact, opinion, interpretation, and rumor into a single continuous storyline. Supporters of deeper investigation argue that questioning narratives is a normal part of media analysis and public accountability. What keeps this entire conversation alive is not just one claim or one event, but the accumulation of overlapping interpretations, media commentary, public sentiment shifts, and evolving cultural attitudes toward monarchy, celebrity, and institutional power. Every new article, video, or discussion adds another layer to an already complex and emotionally charged topic. And in the middle of all this, public opinion data is often used as a reference point to illustrate how perceptions have changed over time, although such data only captures snapshots rather than full explanations. Approval ratings, favorability scores, and polling figures are frequently cited, but they are also influenced by timing, media cycles, and public mood at the moment of measurement. Still, these numbers are used in commentary to argue broader points about reputation, visibility, and cultural relevance, especially when discussing high-profile figures who operate on a global stage. But even here, interpretations vary widely depending on who is analyzing the data and what narrative they believe it supports. What becomes clear through all of this is that the story being discussed is not static. It is constantly shifting, being reinterpreted, reframed, and debated across different platforms and communities. Some see it as a story of ambition and media dynamics, others see it as a story of institutional tension, and others see it simply as public fascination with modern royalty. The strongest takeaway from all of this commentary is that no single narrative dominates completely anymore, and instead, multiple competing versions exist side by side, each shaped by perspective, bias, and interpretation. And that is exactly why the discussion continues to grow rather than settle. So as this conversation moves forward into 2026 and beyond, one thing is clear. People are not done talking about it, not even close. The questions, the interpretations, and the debates are still expanding, and every new voice entering the space adds more momentum to an already fast-moving narrative landscape. And if you've been following all of this, then you already know this story is still unfolding in real time, with no final version locked in yet. Just layers upon layers of discussion building on top of each other every single day. Drop a comment below and tell me what you think about all of this. Do you believe these narratives will eventually settle into one clear version? Or will the debate just keep growing forever? Let's talk about it in the comments. And don't forget to subscribe because this story is far from over. and every update matters as it unfolds.